Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Happy Hour. This is episode 20. And today we are here with Kamalakiran Vinjamuri, who's actually a very, very upcoming budding violinist. Now, he started learning from the age of 7, I think, from his father, and also trained with his grandfather, Sri Parthasati Iyengar, as well as his father, Sri Subhash Vinjamuri. And he's been under the tutelage of Padma Shri Sangeeta Kalanidhi A. Kanyakumari for the past 14 years. And there's so much to know about you today, but I would love it if you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about yourself, your gurus, and how did you get into learning the violin?
Absolutely. So thank you for having me on here. I've seen a lot of CarnaticON's work, and I've been extremely happy that there is something happening in order to increase the awareness of Carnatic music and spread it throughout the world, really. And I really enjoy seeing that a lot, and it kind of really lines up with what I want to do.
Nice.
So I started learning from the age of, I don't remember really, because when I was born into a musical family. My father's a violinist himself. He's been performing for all the top artists in India, and so he really I didn't really have a choice when I came into music. It wasn't like something I saw and I was like, I really want to do this, because ever since I can remember, there was music in the house. My father taught, or he was giving some concerts. My aunt is a dancer. She does Kuchipudi dance, and she has a school called Kala Mandapam.
Nice.
So either that, I was watching these dance performances, and some way or form I was always engaged. So, my grandfather's a violinist, my father's a violinist, so it was kind of like, okay, you have no choice, you have to play the violin. And I'm saying it this way because I always joke with my father. I'm like, what if I didn't like this? What would you do? But, it was incredible, because it was like love at first sight. Ever since I heard it, ever since I listened and I started playing, I don't know if I loved people saying you're doing a good job, or I really loved the music at that time. I didn't really know. But I loved performing. I loved everything to do with music. So I started with my grandfather. Then I learned not only violin, I learned keyboard, I learned the mridangam, I learned how to
Nice.
sing from somebody named Malladi Vijayalakshmi. She's from Tirupati. So I learned from her for a while. And then around the age of 7, I think we decided to get serious with violin. So my father started teaching me. He taught me all the way up till Kritis at that time. And I was already giving some local performances in the Aradhanas here and there. But when you have a father as a teacher as well, sometimes lines can get a little blurred. During class, are you my father? Are you my guru? And I used to definitely take advantage of that. So that's when I think my father determined, like, okay, this is not working. We have to send him to India. And so actually my 4th grade, I lived in India for a year.
Nice.
So I'm born and brought up here, but I moved in 4th grade. I lived in India. I went to school there, everything. And I entered, 4th grade in India. And I started learning from Kanyakumari madam. So Kanyakumari ma'am is one of the most famous violinists in India today. She's Sangeeta Kalanidhi, Padma Shri, you can name it, all the awards she has it. And so I started learning from her at the age of 9, when I didn't really know what I was learning and who I'm sitting in front of. It was just like another, I was just going. I was 9 years old. I didn't know much. But I think that's probably the best experience, because that was in 2006. And since then to now, I still continue to learn from her. And from then on, really, there was no looking back. That's when I realized what it meant to be passionate about music. That's when I realized I want to do music for my life. That's when I realized I love performing more. I started going to December season all the time. I've in all these sabhas, I realized when I started doing the like beginning slots, the morning slots, and gradually progressed to the evening slots. I am fortunate enough to have shared the stage with many established artists, and I also teach a lot. So with all of that, I think my music journey just spearheaded in the right direction from there.
Nice. And as a 9-year-old, were you apprehensive about going to India? What was your feelings around like being sent to a brand new country? Because I mean, there must have been culture shock and all of that to get used to a new place. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, so for me, I always went to India every year. Before that,
Mm-hmm.
also, I would go every summer. After that, I went twice a year. So it was never really much of a culture shock because I speak Tamil fluently. I speak, language is not a barrier. I speak Tamil and Telugu. I have friends in India. So really, I think I was excited because I was living with my cousins and my aunt, and for a long time, I forgot the fact that my parents weren't coming. And I just thought it would be like this vacation,
Yeah.
have fun, or everything else was secondary. But then I went there, and then I realized, yes, I mean, school in India is very different from school here. It started with the first day when the teacher walked in, everyone stood up. And I didn't know I had to stand up when the teacher walked in. So, starting from there, that's when I think I realized, okay, this is very different. I have to get used to the schooling, and that took a
Yeah.
while. I can't say I ever got used to schooling in India,
Yeah.
but I did get used. I made so many friends, and India is like a second home to me. It's America and India are like, there's no difference. I'm able to assimilate in both cultures very seamlessly, so that's good. And then after I
Nice.
started learning from Kanyama and realizing that impact that had, everything else was secondary. I forgot all the other variables.
Yeah, I'm sure. What was your practice session like when you were in India? School, practice, sleep, eat, school, practice. Was it very intense?
Yeah, so I woke up at 5 a.m.
Oh wow.
Not out of choice, of course, again. I'm so thankful that I had my aunt, my appa's sister, and my amma's family who
Mm-hmm.
really did put such a regimented schedule because if it were up to me, I would not be where I am now. So, you know,
Oh.
waking up at 5 a.m., I would practice until I think 7:30 or so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So 1.5 hours of practice. They're 1 hour, let's say. Because, getting up, finishing all the morning routines, and then maybe sit down at 6, practice till 7:30.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then at 7:30, I would go to school. 8 o'clock, I think, was school, and I'd be in school until 2:33.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd come back at 3, and my guru, that Kanyakumari ma'am senior student, his name is Rajesh Kumbakodu. He really, I must thank him a lot. He's the one who really ingrained the style, her style of teaching, her everything. He's the one who really trained me a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
he would be waiting at my house when I came back from school. So that would be at 3 o'clock. So I would learn from him.
Nice.
That'd be like a 1 hour class until 4:30. Then I'd have Kanyakumari madam's class in the evening. So from 4:30 to 6 or 6:30, I'd have to practice so that I could actually show whatever I learned here to her.
Uh,
So
Nice.
then I would go, and then those classes could be as small as 10 minutes, could be as long as 3 hours. Then
Wow.
I'd come back and then do homework. But doing homework, I always found ways to get out of it. But for school, I always found ways to go this way and that way. But for music, I made sure that was done. Then sleep, repeat the same routine. So on average, I think I'd have played practicing at least 3-4 hours, and then classes added on to that would be much more.
Nice, nice. So must pretty intense at that young age, but I guess it's required to practice early on to get the basics right, and so your foundation is
Absolutely,
really strong. Yeah.
absolutely.
Um. So you said you were in India for a year. Did you move back here after that
Yeah,
year,
so I
and
think
then
school ends in April in
yeah,
India, sometime around that time. So I
May or
came
June,
back.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe May. So I came back in May, and school here only starts in September. So
Mm-hmm.
from May to September, I wasn't doing much. So then my father was here, and he made sure I practiced the same way I did in India here as well.
Yeah.
So those 6 months, I think, were again, if I saw as much growth here because I was really able to internalize whatever I learned there with
Yeah.
my father at home every day.
Yeah.
And to this day, that happens. So yeah, then I moved back,
Nice.
and I've been going twice a year ever since for the music season and for any other concerts. I'd always go back.
Nice, nice. So do you think that one year in India really helped kind of, solidify your foundation and teach you a lot?
Absolutely, because it was kind of like a boot camp.
Yeah.
In that
Yeah.
1 year, I probably learned. See, I joined and I started, and within 3 months, I was giving a concert along with my guru's group in Bangalore. So
Nice.
that was how intense. She was just like, no, you have to get him ready for that. So I really was, it was really a boot camp. And I
Nice.
think that really helped because then I still learned over the phone. I learned over, she doesn't do Skype classes or anything, so it'll be
Mhm.
a phone class. And I would still go and learn from her, but I think that 1 year really made a huge difference.
Yeah, nice. And I understand you and your dad run a music school as well. Can you tell us more about that? How did it originate? How are you involved in it on a daily basis?
Yeah. So my aunt, that is Mrinalini Sadananda, she has a school called Kala Mandapam, which is a dance and music school. So she's the
Mm-hmm.
founder of that. And my father had always taught music in that. But in addition to that, we get, and all the students now, we are basically a part of that school.
Mm-hmm.
But we get students on a daily basis who learn privately from both my father and myself. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for the past, my father, at least for the past 20 plus years, he's been teaching in America. I
Nice.
had started teaching since the age of 12. My first student was at the age of 12, and that's because he was scared of my father. So Appa was like, okay, you teach, it'll be good experience. But I think teaching early on made me realize that teaching is probably the best form of learning for me. If I
Mm-hmm.
learn anything, if I even to this day, if my guru teaches me a song, for example, or if I learn something, I listen to some song and I say, okay, I love this,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing I do is teach it to my students because that's the
Nice.
best way that it can ingrain into me. So early on, I learned that was the best way of learning for me. And
Mm-hmm.
secondly, I learned that that's what I wanted to do. Like, in addition to performing, many people are either performers or teachers, and many people do both. But for me, teaching is more than just a livelihood. I think teaching is a real passion. I love to share what I've gotten with I have students who are um, 5, and I have a student who's currently 88, 89, who also learns.
Amazing.
I love teaching. I will, yeah, and I think I love teaching from a student's mindset because I know being born and brought up here is also different. And
Mm-hmm.
I know what worked for me, so I know how to, I would like to think I know how to translate that to other people here.
Yeah.
So I think teaching plays a huge role, and yeah, school is expanding every day. So very happy to say that.
Nice. And are your students based predominantly in the US or are you teaching all over the world as well?
So a lot of them are predominantly in the Virginia and U.S. New York, East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
They're all performers in their own right. Most of them have performed in India. My students and Appa students, they've
Nice.
all performed during the season as well. But we also do teach. I mean, there's a lot of students who are beginners as well.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a couple students overseas. There's Chong Chu Sen. I'm not sure if you've heard of him. He's also called Tsai Madan Mohan. He
Mm-hmm.
is he's a Chinese person living in Malaysia,
Oh,
and
nice.
he is actually he's quite famous. He sings lots of Sai bhajans and everything, and he's been singing a lot. So I've been teaching him. He's also my student.
Nice.
So yeah, I have a student in Malaysia, and I have one or two in India, but most of them are here,
In the
and then
US.
I have, yeah, most of them are in the US.
Nice. And in terms of like these, I mean, it's obviously a minority, your students outside of the US, but is there, or do you think there needs to be a certain difference in teaching when it comes to both of these demographics, or do you follow kind of the same trend?
The only thing I do differently when I teach, see, I'm a huge student even when I teach. I always teach from the perspective of a student. I don't
Mhm.
think that I am worthy of teaching in terms of if I say I'm an artist who can teach. I really think teaching, you don't have to be as long as you know how to share what you love, I think you can be a teacher. So the biggest thing that I do is I make sure that everyone, no matter regardless of demographic, I'm able to communicate in a way that that person is able to understand.
Mhm.
And I have to say that I can only thank my guru, both my appa and my guru, for this because I see how they teach. My guru Kanyama, she has students literally all over the world. Probably every
Nice.
country you name it, she has a student. And
Nice.
every single student, if you hear them, they're all at a certain level who are incredible. And I have no idea how she does it. So I try to take that inspiration when I teach. The only thing I would say that I do differently when I teach kids from here is that I try to use vocabulary, and I try to make Carnatic music more than just an extracurricular activity.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the biggest thing, because I noticed that when it's just another extracurricular activity, many kids are just like, okay, we're just doing this, you know. Either it's uncool because it's not part of their
Yeah.
culture, or it's just because I'm on up, my parents are telling me to do it, or whatever. They just kind of shut up and do it.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's a way to sell, for lack of a better word, sell this music
Mm-hmm.
so that you can experience what actually it is to enjoy the music before you actually play. So I think I focus on making that enjoyment the primary thing. Once you learn what there is to enjoy about the music, it no longer becomes a chore and it's no longer another extracurricular. So I
Yeah.
think that's the only thing that I try to make sure that I do extra when I teach kids from here, because that's an added baggage, I think. For a lot of them here, they don't know why they're doing it. What's the point of this? Where am I going with this? So I
Yeah.
think that those are the biggest questions to answer.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense because I think um, over here, like you said, it could be more of an extracurricular thing. But in India, I think a lot of people start off learning and wanting to be professional musicians. And that's kind of a different tangent there, I guess. Nice, very cool. Your bio also said that you've composed music for dance ballets.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty fascinating. And can you tell us what did you do exactly and how was that process? How did you get into that?
Yeah, so again, all with my father. So my father has composed numerous pieces for dance recitals. As I said,
Nice
my aunt is a dancer, so
dancer.
she's done numerous productions. They've been featured in venues like the Kennedy Center here in the
Yeah.
DC, and pretty major venues. So
Mm-hmm.
I think composing, again, for me, again, it's just by watching my father. He's done so much that when she said, okay, your turn to try, I said, okay, I'll try. And since then, it's just been, again, nonstop. I've been able to do many of those. Some of my compositions were premiered in the Kennedy Center as well. And
Nice.
yeah, I continue to do that whenever I can.
And where do you draw inspiration for all of these compositions?
I mean, I don't think I can say I have composed, because in Carnatic music, I think there's a big misconception that we do things on the spot. We do things just like that. And I think really the better word to use is reorganize. We
Yeah.
have like data points that are set by all the composers who've already composed, and by the ragam itself. Different
Mm-hmm.
ragas, different tunes, they give you a way. There's already these data points. So you just have to logically choose the right data points and connect it to each other. And I think
Yeah.
that's what it is. So inspiration comes from the fact that I've just learned. I continue to marvel at how much these great composers have already done, or how much these great artists perform. So I just take
Yeah.
that, and if something hits, then I'm inspired by that. This
Yeah.
is for
Nice.
composing, this is for performing, this is for anything about art. I think as long as you listen and you learn to be a good listener and you enjoy what you listen to, that inspiration will automatically hit.
Yeah. Yeah. Very nice. Very well said. You've also worked on a lot of fundraisers. That's actually, I think, a very nice thing to do. Fundraisers for underprivileged societies. What motivated you to kind of start working on that? And tell us a little bit more about the organizations that you guys have supported.
Yeah, so Kalamadapam itself, or my music school, my father's music school, I won't say we're a fundraiser, but we have taught and we've performed for many causes like Chinmaya Mission.
Hmm.
Chinmaya Mission is one of the, I'm sure you know about the organization Chinmaya
Yeah, I've
Mission.
heard
They
of it.
have
Yeah.
many schools, and so we've raised money for them. We've raised money for all the temples in our local area. We have raised money for many underprivileged. Appas hails from the village of Guntur. It's a town now in Andhra Pradesh. So we have
Yeah.
raised money for many artists there. So many artists that are incredibly talented but don't have the resources to actually get out there. You know,
Yeah.
even if you're a wonderful teacher, you can be a wonderful performer, but if you don't have the resources to market, then no one's gonna come.
Yeah.
So for those people who really dedicated their life to music and need the money, we have done a lot of fundraisers for them.
Hmm.
Then here we have an organization. There's Shankara Netralaya. It's an organization that's an eye. It funds free eye surgeries in India for
Yeah.
underprivileged societies. So
Hmm.
one of my students, Sanjit Narayanan, and his father is actually a manager in Shankara Netralaya. He deals with a lot of the cultural aspects of Shankara Netralaya. So him, my student, and myself, we got together and we thought, okay, we during this COVID time, already they're doing free eye surgeries and they'll really need much more support now.
Yeah.
So let's organize a series. So it started as a 10-day series. We just
Hmm.
started hoping that this would just be a 10-day series. We got all artists together and we were hoping, okay, if we get some money, this will be good because although I do have a lot of experience organizing things, and so does Saumi Uncle, we all have so much experience. COVID was a new avenue for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to organize a live event because we're so used to doing that. You know, we do
Hmm.
Tyagaraja Aratanas, we do concerts. Saumi Uncle, I call him fondly. He's done so much. I've done many organizations like this, but it was something we were like, okay, let's just try this and let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
Started as a 10-day festival. We started July 4th in 2020,
Hmm.
and now it's 2021 and we have performances booked until July 4th of 2021. And
Nice. That's awesome.
yeah, and we have gotten artists from all over the world, established artists, upcoming artists, even people who are maybe not performers but in Carnatic music, but they sing bhajans, or they're dancers, or they're just kids who need some motivation to continue, and they
Hmm.
like showcasing whatever they have, even if that's geetams, uh, created a safe platform for all of them, and we made sure that we have, I think, over 160 concerts happened so far,
Nice.
160 events, fully on Facebook, and we've raised over $85,000. And I
That's
really have
amazing.
to say that Saumya Narayanan sir, that's my student's father, he approached me and he said, "Oh, why don't we do this?" And I started it along with him and his my student. We started it together, but really they have taken it to another level. And I mean, of course, I'm still part of it. We're all doing it together, but I just have to give them credits as well. That this, without the three of us coordinating together, this would not have been possible. And I think I'll just conclude by saying that I again believe firmly that music has to be shared. It has to be shared in the right way. I think there's so many avenues where you can do so much with. It's such a minuscule thing if you think about it,
Mm.
because the world isn't gonna gain anything or lose anything by my violin, really, because it's a selfish endeavor of a sort. You're just doing it for your enjoyment, but when you're able to take that away and actually impact some people around you, I
Yeah.
think that's when it becomes really meaningful.
I agree. I totally agree. And that's amazing that you guys have raised so much money. It's super inspiring because, it's such a good use of your time as well and making the most out of your talents. I would love for people to follow this. It's on Facebook, you said. How
Yeah,
can people follow this?
you can find the Shankara Netralaya Om Trust, and
Okay.
there's concerts almost every day that's being premiered there. So
Nice.
just find the Shankara Netralaya Om Trust because it's the DC Maryland chapter of it,
Right.
and yeah, and you'll find
Okay.
all the concerts there.
Awesome, awesome. So I think people watching should definitely go check it out, and there'll be a lot of concerts to look at. Yeah, I mean, we've talked a bit, so I'm going to let you play some violin. Have you play some violin if you can, please, and
Absolutely,
we'll continue after.
sure. Let me just turn on the Shruti box here.
Yeah, absolutely. lovely. Thank you so much. That was lovely.
Thank you.
So, like, the violin is so soulful. It's such a soulful instrument to me to listen to. And my sister was learning the Western violin. I mean, for like a layperson like me, what's the difference between the two? And have you learned the Western violin at all?
Yes, so I've learned Western classical violin from my fourth grade again.
Oh, nice.
Started in school here, and then I also have a private teacher who I've learned from for quite a while. Um, and I think it's a pity because I at the time when I was learning Western violin regularly, I did not practice as much as I should have.
Ah,
Definitely so much more into Carnatic music, and I didn't. It's not that I didn't see the value of it, but it's like two different instruments. But one thing is, for any style, if you have some knowledge of the swarams and you have some knowledge of how the notes go, you can kind of get by it, albeit not with the right technique. But now, actually, the other day I called her, saying her name is Diana Sunsvold. Please do check her out; she's incredible. So I called her the other day, and I said, I need help with a certain Western bowing because I want to use that in Carnatic music for some of the things that I'm doing. So how do I do it? And we were just laughing about how if I actually paid attention back then, I would have known how to do it. This is just a funny story. But it's really, like I say, two different instruments. First thing, the tuning is different. So here we have a tonic note. That's the bass sa. Sa. Right now this is tuned to D sharp. So we have four strings, G, D, A, and E. So in Western music, it's tuned to the pitches of G, D, A, and E. And that's the only tuning that does not change. And of course, because of the style of playing and because of the kind of vibrato that it involves and the kind of bow movement it involves, you hold it like this and play.
yeah.
Whereas the Carnatic music, we have all these gamakams and these oscillations, so we need some support from our foot. So that we are able to do these oscillations. And our tuning will change based on what we keep our tonic note to be. So the tonic note can be whatever you want. If it's a solo, typically it's D sharp or E. If you're playing for if you're accompanying any artist, then it'll be to their whatever their tonic or main pitches. And then you tune the first and third strings in octaves. They're the same thing in two different octaves. And the second and fourth strings in octaves. So you can hear it's the same thing, but it's in two different octaves.
Yeah.
And that's how we always tune Carnatic violin. But because there's such a range of shrutis, different people singing different shrutis, we typically have 2 or 3 violins, where one is for the low shrutis, one is for solos, one is for high shrutis, and
I see.
kind of go shuttling between those 3 violins. Yeah.
I never knew that. Interesting. Very cool. You learn something new every day. Very nice. You've obviously performed a lot with a lot of very interesting people. If there's one artist that you haven't performed with yet, but is like your dream concert, like who would that be?
Unfortunately, this is not to sound arrogant in any way at all, but unfortunately, a lot of the artists that I really wish that I could have been playing for, they were the golden age of 60s and 70s. When you listen to Carnatic music, you listen to some of their music, and I think I'd speak for everyone when you hear that there's something different about that music. And even when I practice, sometimes I put on a YouTube recording of one of them and pretend to be accompanying them because that's the closest I could ever get to accompanying them. But I really wish that I was able to accompany any of those legends. But that being said, I was fortunate enough to accompany many of those, including M. Balamurali Krishna sir, who is, a huge role model. Balamurali Krishna sir and T.K. Govindarao sir, who has actually written the Carnatic books. If you look at any of the Tyagaraja books, 99% of the times they're written by him. And when I was actually playing for him, I had no clue that that's who I'm playing for. And now when I think back, Balamurali Krishna sir is another one. I've been fortunate to be able to play for T.N. Seshagopalan sir. Then many of the leading artists of today, Abhishek Raghuram, T.M. Krishna, Sudha Raghunathan ma'am. I mean, all of them, and my guru. And I've also been fortunate enough to share the stage with some of the very leading Mridangam exponents.
Nice.
And actually, my dream would be I've shared the stage. I've been fortunate enough to share the stage with TK Murthy sir, who is one of the most famous mridangists, and also Trichy Shankaran Mama. And Shankaran Mama, and both of those were incredible experiences. I'll talk about Shankaran Mama because it was recent. I played with him twice recently.
Nice.
He is one of the mridangists who has accompanied all those artists in the 60s that I talk about. So I remember when I first spoke to him, I said, I really am like I don't know, fangirling is, I think that's what they say. I'm crazy right now. I don't know how I'm supposed to sit on a stage when I learned everything listening to you.
Yeah.
And, his response was, when you sit on stage, you're equals. There's no such thing as seniority. There's no such thing as
Oh,
junior or whatever. And, it was just an amazing experience to be able to play with him. And I would say, actually, I would love to play with some of the other leading mridangists in that generation. That is Umayalpuram Shivaraman sir and Kare Kurimani sir. Both of them, and there are many others, of course, but these two mridangists have also paved the way by accompanying many of those leading artists in the 60s, and I would love to share the stage with them as well, if I get the chance at any point.
yeah, nice. Very cool. Very cool. Speaking of Mridangam, actually, just the last week we interviewed Ashwini, who's like an up and coming female Mridangist. It's pretty cool to see a woman playing the Mridangam.
Oh,
Just
absolutely.
looks really cool. And I
Yeah.
think the violin, a lot of women do play the violin, both in classical, Carnatic, as well as Western classical. I think a lot of women are playing the violin, but to see someone play the Mridangam, I was pretty fascinated with that. So it was pretty fun. But yeah, I mean, we were talking there about the whole gender bias thing. Because I asked her as a woman, I'm very curious, as a man, why do you think the little disparity exists, and why not that many women pick up these percussion instruments?
For percussion, it's interesting. Before I even touch on percussion, I do want to say something about even violin and music. As much as we like to think it's in percussion, it's there in everything. And I think that's something we have to say. And I don't know why. Because for me, again, I've never looked at anything that way. So it's so hard for someone who hasn't looked at anyone that way to even try to understand why that even exists
Yeah.
in the first place. But I would like to say something that my guru, Kanyakumari madam, she had at a very young age, she was, and she's played for all these artists that I talked about in the 60s, and she's played for all of them in the 70s. She was one of the prime violinists for M.L. Vasantakumari, who's one of the most famous Carnatic musicians. They call her one of the Trinity vocalists.
Yeah.
So, as a woman, in that time in the 70s, she moved from Vijayanagaram along with her mother, came to Chennai by herself, and made it as a Carnatic violinist in that time when really it was being ruled by mostly men at that time.
Yeah.
And I think that, to me, first of all, when I started learning from her, I think the first thing that was ever ingrained in my head is there's no such, don't ever even entertain that when you play for anyone, because she'll always say what she went through, and she'd always make sure that the first thing I understand is that music is beyond gender, beyond religion, beyond race, beyond all of those things. And I think I really have to thank her for that, because I have such a positive female role model to look to even kind of understand that side of the perspective. Because otherwise, I always feel like it's so easy for men to sit down and say, oh, this exists, this gender bias exists. Like, who are we to say that? We're on the good end of the coin. We don't get to say that. So to be able to see that my guru, what she's went through, and to be able to speak to her and really marvel at what she said, what she's done, I think that I just wanted to preface by saying that. And I also want to say that even today in the 21st century, there are artists who will not accompany or be on stage with women. That's a thing even today. Forget percussion. We haven't even gotten to percussion. So that is a thing. Unfortunately, that is a thing. I'm not sure why that's a thing, and I'm just glad that with each next generation, that is, I think I would like to say, I have no right to say this, but I'd like to say that it's getting better and better. As you can see, there are amazing people like Ashwini who plays the mridangam. There's Rajna Swaminathan. There's Samyukta Sriram, who's a Gattam artist here in Virginia, and I'm seeing it a lot more. And my guru is a prime example of one. And we have Ranjani Gayatri. I can keep Sudha Raghunathan. I can keep on naming names who have just
Yeah.
become incredible. Now, when it comes to percussion, I think already as a female artist back in the day, you had to overcome the barrier of, okay, once you get married,
Yeah.
you're not going to give up the artist. You're not going to give up anything. You're still going to sing. They had to overcome that barrier in the first place.
Yeah.
Many of the artists. And that was the biggest barrier. And also, society was like, why are you performing? It's not your place. I don't know what really, I can't speak for anything, but I guess that was the mindset back then.
Yeah.
So all the artists had to overcome that barrier. That was just to sing or to play. And I'm not trying to create a barrier between percussion and the rest. But when you come to percussion, already in a society where there is a gender bias, there's even more of a bias for percussion, where it's seen as something where you need strength, a lot more stamina, and all these things.
Yeah.
So in a society which already has those barriers, this is even more. So I think we've crossed the first stage, and now, hopefully we have crossed the first stage, and it's time to get that out of the place too. Because I really think that, and I saw this in another interview. I heard a very famous mridangist say this. His name is Ananta Krishnan, a really good mridangist. He was saying, the world will see one day there will be somebody who's just 10 times better than everyone in, as a female, and she's going to bring new dimensions to the mridangam. And I'm just waiting for that to happen as well, because there's so many people doing this, and I'm just waiting in the next 10 years. People like Ashwini, Rajna, and all of them, they would have created landmarks in Carnatic music, and I think it's definitely better late than never, and I'm waiting for that to happen. But I think in terms of being friends with people like Ashwini, I know Ashwini, I've played with her, and Samyukta as a Gattam artist. I think they told me that, at least Samyukta, I can say for a fact, she has said that you always get these comments still. For a female, she plays really well, and I think that has to, and and some people don't even say it in a condescending way. They just don't realize that what they're saying is, they'll just be like, "Oh, I've never seen a girl play Gattam so well," and I'm like, you can just say, "I've never seen Gattam being played so well," right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest challenge that she's facing, and people like her are facing, because they want to get rid of that barrier.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
No, I appreciate the candor, because I think a lot of people don't really want to acknowledge this exists. They're like, oh no, everything's fine and rosy. But I've always, because I don't know, I watch from the outside, right? I'm not a player, I'm not a musician, but I feel like that definitely exists, and it's good to hear that there's some truth behind it, because it can't be just coming out of nowhere. And I agree that this has to change, and it should come from everybody. Like, yeah, I mean, totally, that whole line of like, oh, as a woman, she's playing so well, that really resonates with me, because I feel like, sometimes people unconsciously say that and they don't mean it that way, but then it just comes out because it's not normal, it's not common, right? We've not seen it happen before. So that's, once we reach to the point where, where maybe somebody's, now people look at men and like, oh, maybe we're surprised a man can do Bharatanatyam so well. It is kind of similar stuff like that, where you need to make everything so common, and that it just becomes the norm in the future. And I can't wait for that day as well.
Yeah, as a man, the only thing I can say is, in order for us to even go towards fixing any problems like this, there's so many problems, and I think the biggest thing that we can do, because we, as I said, we're always unfortunately on the good end of the coin. So I always get irked when everyone's like, oh, we should do this. I'm like, we're saying this, but only, like, we will never understand. Like, we will actually never understand. But I think the only thing that we can do is acknowledge, or the biggest thing we can do doesn't even happen, that is that acknowledge that this is a problem and this has been happening.
Yeah.
And also acknowledge people like Ashwini and Samyukta and Rajna, and there's so many others. There's a famous Gattam artist by the name of Sukanya Ramgopal in Bangalore, who's very senior artist, who's been doing amazing things with Gattam. My guru has actually led an all-female ensemble
Nice.
of music. So I think just to acknowledge the fact that's there, and also to just keep on making sure that happens a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
No.
me, because Samyukta, I keep on talking about Samyukta only because she's born in North Carolina, but she moved here and her sister learned from my father. So
Oh,
for
nice.
me, it was actually never like, even kids will say, "Oh, a girl playing percussion." People will say that because even kids are not used to seeing it. But for
Yeah.
me, because I've grown up with her, I've played with her, I've seen her grow up, it's never been a shock to say, "Oh my God, a girl is playing." I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, because I think some level of awareness should be there so that this problem can become a norm. But
Yeah.
for me, it's almost like a norm because I have her here, and I'm so happy to see people like that happening, and I just hope that everyone can see it as a norm as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I really hope that every one day this is so normalized that it's not a big deal anymore. So, that's awesome. Very cool. Excuse me. I mean, with COVID, I'm assuming you didn't get to travel back for the December season last year. What did you do with all of that time that you had? Like, did you increase your practice? Did both in terms of time, complexity? Did you get up to new projects? What were you up to?
So there's a lot of recording projects that I've been doing. COVID
Nice.
is what has, if the audio and the video in this call is somewhat okay, and there was a lot of complaints of it not being okay in the beginning, but if it's somewhat okay, it's because of COVID, because it forced me to get the lighting that's in front of me right now. It forced me to get a mic.
Mm-hmm.
Carnatic music is a very live performance oriented music.
Yeah.
And so I will just say positively, I've gotten better at recordings. I've gotten better at mic play, because these are things that we weren't taught. It's not something that was. I mean, there's so many people who've always done it, but I've always been only doing live recording. So I took up
Yeah.
some sound engineering courses. I learned how to
Nice.
do those things, um, and of course, teaching increased a lot. Learning increased a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot. I taught a lot. I definitely practiced a lot. But I will say concerts have been going on. There's some virtual concerts, or there's some virtual recording happening, or there's some kind of big or small something is always happening. And there were some workshops that I've hosted with some very senior artists, and
Nice.
so I find a way to keep myself busy. And I think COVID has really shown me at least, that music is more than performance for me. I love performing. I want to be a performer. I'll always be a performer. But I think I think everyone, when they do a career, they're always faced with, if I didn't have to do it,
Mm-hmm.
would I still do it? Always faced with that question, would I do it if I don't have to do it?
Yeah.
And before COVID, I was traveling every weekend. I had just finished I've finished a couple tours with Sudha Raghunathan ma'am and some other
Nice.
Unni Krishnan sir. Both of them
Nice.
had come, so I finished two tours with them. I went to Cleveland and I went to India, and I came back. January came, and I was supposed to tour with TM Krishna. Um, I mean, I've been fortunate to share the stage with him many times before, but this year I was supposed to tour with him, and Neveli Santanagopalan sir, Sri Ranjani Santanagopalan. And then I was supposed to go to India and do some tours there. So I was packed, and this happened, and it was like a shock to everyone, because first
Yeah.
TM Krishna's got cancelled, then Sri Ranjani's got cancelled, and everyone was just calling me, and they're like, "What's happening? What are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
what's gonna happen?" And I was quite stressed initially, because
Mm.
my whole lifestyle changed,
Yeah.
and for me, and again, I'm talking as a kid here. I mean, imagine for the artists who are in India who do this, that must be, it must be, I don't know how they've done it and how they continue to do it.
Yeah.
Everything I say is always from, I speak with a lot of passion, because I always marvel at how everyone else does it, and I always hope I can use this as an inspiration. But so it was tough for me, because for a couple of months I just was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, sure, I'm studying, I'm doing different things, I'm working, and that's always there, but I was always thinking music was going to be my full time. So what is it
Mm-hmm.
mean for music to be a full time when I'm not able to perform? That
Yeah.
was the biggest question that was being asked, and I think as the months went on, I realized I'm happy just teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Then that happened, and then many people had their own problems with COVID, and then some for a while teaching got
Yeah.
reduced for a while because some people had to, everyone's adjusting to this. So then I wasn't able to teach in person; it all became virtual. So there was a little bit of a break because before we learned how. It's a very hands-on thing. So before we could come accustomed to that, there was some time where I wasn't even doing that. That's when I
Mm-hmm.
realized that I'm very happy as long as this instrument is in my hand. Like, this is really all I need for music to be my full time, and I'll find a way to make it my full time, regardless of what that means.
Yeah.
Whether that's organizing this fundraiser or whatever, whether that's just sitting and playing. I know for one fact, and I believe this very firmly, that if this is really how I feel, if I realize that all I need is this in my hand, then there'll be a way that money will come. There'll be a way that these things will work out. I'll make it work, There's
Yeah.
always something you can do to make
Yeah.
this. I did realize that I didn't need performance in order to have music as a full time. That being said, I miss December season very dearly. So I really do want to get back. I really do want to get back to performing and traveling because that's a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
always most of the learning happens on stage. Every
Yeah.
concert's on program, and I'm waiting to get back.
Yeah.
All of
Yeah.
this being said.
No, there was a lot. There were a lot of inspiring nuggets there of wisdom, and I hope artists who are up and coming can take something from that and realize, or just keep at it, because this has been a stressful time for everyone, and especially for the performing arts, because that is the performing arts. So people need to be out there, need to be in concerts, need to be doing a lot of things. So I can imagine it has been a pretty stressful time for everybody. But I think there was a lot of inspiration to take from a lot of the things you said there. This has been great, Kamal. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Before I let you go,
Likewise.
and before you can say your goodbyes, I would love it if you could play a little bit more for us, because that was beautiful.
Absolutely. So the first ragam I played was Sindhu Bhairavi.
Mm-hmm.
Sindhu Bhairavi is one of my favorite ragams. My guru has composed a Tillana in it, which I loved. And it's usually played as a so-called lighter ragam. I say so-called because there's so many dimensions to a ragam. You can't. It's a
Mm-hmm.
personal one, but usually it's played as a lighter ragam. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
play a little bit of a what's known as a heavier ragam called Yadukula Kamboji. It's one of my favorite ragams. So I'll just end with a bit of a song in that
Okay.
ragam.
Nice. Lovely. Thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. For people wanting to find out more about Kamal, he's actually going to be on the website, so www.carnaticon.com. If you go there, you can get more information about him. Kamal, thank you so much. I hope
Thank
you
you.
enjoyed this as much as I did. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.